The fact that this formation proceeds under the conditions of the abnormally established process of the ordinary existence of people, and that the horse grows up ignored like an orphan by everybody, and moreover an ill-treated orphan. It neither acquires anything corresponding to the established psyche of the coachman, nor learns anything of what he knows, and hence is quite ignorant of all the forms of reciprocal relationship which have become usual for the coachman, and no contact is established between them for understanding each other. It is possible, however, that in its locked-in life, the horse does nevertheless learn some form of relationship with the coachman, and that even, perhaps, it is familiar with some language. But the trouble is that the coachman does not know this, and does not even suspect its possibility. Apart from the fact that, owing to the said abnormal conditions, no data for even an approximate understanding of each other are formed between the horse and the coachman, there are also still other and numerous external causes independent of them, which fail to give them the possibility of together actualizing that one purpose for which they were both destined. The point is that just as the separate independent parts of the hackney are connected, namely the carriage to the horse by the shafts, and the horse to the coachman by the reins, so also are the separate parts of the general organization of man connected with each other. Namely, the body is connected to the feeling organization by the blood, and the feeling organization is connected to the organization actualizing the functioning of mentation or consciousness by what is called handbladzoin. That is, by that substance which arises in the common presence of a man from all intentionally made efforts. The wrong system of education existing at the present time has led to the coachman's ceasing to have any effect whatever on his horse, unless we allow the fact that he is merely able by means of the reins to engender in the consciousness of the horse just three ideas: right, left, and stop. Strictly speaking, he cannot always do even this, because the reins in general are made of materials that react to various atmospheric phenomena. For example, during a pouring rain they swell and contract, and in heat the contrary, thereby changing their effect upon the horse's automatized sensitiveness of perception. The same proceeds in the general organization of the average man whenever, from some impression or other, the, so to say, density and tempo of the handbladzoin changes in him, when his thoughts entirely lose all possibility of affecting his feeling organization. And so, to resume all that has been said, one must willy-nilly acknowledge that every man should strive to have his own eye. Otherwise he will always represent a hackney carriage in which any fare can sit, and which any fare can dispose of just as he pleases. And here it will not be superfluous to point out that the Institute for the Harmonious Development of Man, organized on the system of Mr. Gurdjieff, has, among its fundamental tasks, also the task of, on the one hand, correspondingly educating in its pupils each of the enumerated independent personalities separately as well as in their general reciprocal relationship, and on the other hand, of begetting and fostering in each of its pupils what every bearer of the name of man without quotation marks should have: his own eye. For a more exact, so to say, scientific definition of the difference between a genuine man, that is, man as he ought to be, and a man who we have called man in quotation marks, that is, such men as almost all contemporary people have become, it is fitting to repeat what was said about this by Mr. Gurdjieff himself in one of his personal lecture talks. It was as follows: for the definition of man, considered from our point of view, neither anatomical nor physiological nor psychological. Contemporary knowledge of his symptoms can assist us. Since they are inherent in one degree or another in every man and consequently apply equally to all. Hence, they do not enable us to establish the exact difference which we wish to establish between people. This difference can only be formulated in the following terms. Man is a being who can do, and to do means to act consciously and by one's own initiative. And indeed, every more or less sane-thinking man who is able to be, if only a little impartial, must admit that hitherto there has not been, nor can there be, a fuller and more exhaustive definition. Even suppose that we provisionally accept this definition. The question inevitably arises, can a man who is a product of contemporary education and civilization do anything at all himself, consciously and by his own will? No, we answer at the very beginning to this question. Why not? Solely because, as the Institute for the Harmonious Development of Man experimentally proves, and from experiments categorically affirms, everything without exception from beginning to end does itself in contemporary man, and there is nothing which a contemporary man himself does. In personal, family, and communal life, in politics, science, art, philosophy, and religion, in short, in everything entering into the process of the ordinary life of a contemporary man, everything from beginning to end does itself. And not a single one of these victims of contemporary civilization can do anything. This experimentally proved categorical affirmation of the Institute for the Harmonious Development of Man, namely that the ordinary man can do nothing, and that everything does itself in him and through him, coincides with what is said of man by contemporary exact positive science. Contemporary exact positive science says that a man is a very complex organism developed by evolution from the simplest organisms, and who has now become capable of reacting in a very complex manner to external impressions. This capability of reacting in man is so complex, and the responsive movements can appear to be so far removed from the causes evoking them and conditioning them, that the actions of man, or at least a part of them, seem to naive observation quite spontaneous. But according to the ideas of Mr. Gurdjieff, the average man is indeed incapable of the single smallest independent or spontaneous action or word. All of him is only the result of external effect. Man is a transforming machine, a kind of transmitting station of forces. Thus, from the point of view of the totality of Mr. Gurdjieff's ideas, and also according to contemporary exact positive science, man differs from the animals only by the greater complexity of his reactions to external impressions, and by having a more complex construction for perceiving and reacting to them. And as to that which is attributed to man and named will, Mr. Gurdjieff completely denies the possibility of its being in the common presence of the average man. Will is a certain combination obtained from the results of certain properties specially elaborated in themselves by people who can do.